I'm back today with another design team project for DiesRUs. This time I made this card with a galaxy background and images from the Upon a Star stamp set from Lawn Fawn. Hello and welcome to Debbie J's Crafting Corner. I'm Debbie and each week I show you how you can create awesome cards and other crafty projects. Because if I can make it, you can too. So if you'd like to see more tutorials and inspirational videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. I pulled out one of my older stamp sets that I really haven't used a bunch. I think I've used it a couple of times. It's Lawn Fawn's Upon a Star. It's got some really sweet little images, a couple of foxes, a couple of bunnies, and they're looking away. It looks like they're looking up at the sky. I'm also trying out a couple of different camera angles to see if I can get, so that you guys can see what I'm doing a little better when I'm coloring. So you'll notice down in the lower right hand corner there's kind of a screen where you can see a different angle for my coloring. Not sure if I like the way that this one looks or not, but you guys let me know what you think. Do you like that new angle? Would you prefer me to do more of that? Just let me know down in the comments, because you know these videos that I do are all for you. So for this card, since I'm using a galaxy background, I'm going to go ahead and color up all four of those cute little characters. And I'm trying something a little different this time too. You may have noticed that I'm coloring the fox very dark over the entire image, and then I'm going back in with the lightest, that highlight color, and trying to put a light highlight right around the edges. Now what I'm trying to do, and I've seen it done by other crafters before, is I'm trying to create the illusion that there is light in front of him, meaning his back of course is going to be in shadow, but you can still see a little of that highlight around the edges. All of my coloring's being done today using Spectrum Noir markers, and for the foxes I'm using the red-brown family, so that's RB1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going in with RB4 really to get the darkest part and the darkest shadow on this, because of course the very back of the little foxes of course is going to be the one that is going to be in the deepest shadow, and I want that to be visible when you're looking at the little guy. For the bunnies, I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm starting off with some grays for the little tail. I did do a light gray, I believe that was GG1, and then I'm going in with a couple of the darker ones to make it, again, having the bunny in shadow. When I started on the bodies, I'm going in with the MB markers. So for that highlight area that I'm planning, I'm going in with MB1. And then I'm going to come back in with some of the darker shades, you know, MB2, MB3, and MB4. MB4 is going to be the darkest part because, again, that is the part that we're going to want in the deepest shadow. So I've got that kind of showing the outline of the ears. To be honest, I think it mostly got blended out because the entire back of the bunny is going to be in such dark shadow. But this is my first attempt at this, and I haven't tried to color any of my characters this dark before, but I do absolutely love how it turns out in the end. Next, I'm going to just fussy cut out each of the characters. Now, there is a die set that corresponds with this stamp set. I don't have it. It is available over at DiesRUs though, and I'll leave a link to that down below for you. In this case, because I'm using that background, I would have wanted to fussy cut it out anyway without a border, because I don't want there to be that little gap of white space around my little characters when they're looking up at that night sky. So I'm just slowly going through and fussy cutting each of these out. One tip for you on fussy cutting: try to make sure that you turn the paper more than you do the scissors. It makes it a lot easier to get this done pretty quickly. There is a little bit of that white showing around the edges, so I just took my Spectrum Noir black marker that I don't use very often for anything, and then I just went around all of those edges and tried to basically cover up the core of the paper so that it isn't quite as obvious when I get everything mounted onto my card. The background that I'm using is one of the Galaxy backgrounds that I created in my live stream this past Tuesday. If you want to see the rest of that video and how I made a bunch of different Galaxies type backgrounds, go ahead and take a look at that video here. I'm speeding through the video of one of the backgrounds that I created using some of the Distress Oxide inks. The background that I'm using for my card today is one of the ones that I created using Distress Oxide, so this will give you a general idea of what I did to create that. So I started off by putting a lot of different colors down on my panel in the Distress Oxide inks. So I used some yellows and orange and purple and blue. Then I did a light splattering of some water over that using my Distress Sprayer, and then I'm going back in with some black soot to darken that sky up, but trying my best to let some of that color show through. This is kind of a newish technique for me, so I am still learning, and I really wanted on this specific panel to have kind of that galaxy showing through in the center, so it's got a lot of that yellow glow coming right out of the middle. Then I'm going back over it again with some more water to put down some more of that splatter and to try to bring out some of those colors. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and put down some white splatter in some white gouache for some stars. So next I'm going to be stamping and embossing some of those constellations up into the sky of one of those backgrounds that I had created on my live stream earlier this week. I neglected to actually record that part, so I'm so sorry about that. I did use my anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to be doing all of the embossing is using the WOW embossing ink and White Recollections embossing powder. So I'm going to be using my Recollections white embossing powder, which is one of the reasons that I've made sure to use that anti-static powder, because otherwise it wouldn't work too good. I'm going to just sprinkle some of that down on all those pretty stars and those constellations. That looks pretty good, but I think I need a little bit more on this side. Next, I'm going to be using one of my Grassy Hill border dies to make kind of a little hill for these little guys to sit on. So I need to figure out which one do I want to use. And I've just got a scrap piece of cardstock here. Okay, so now I've got this nice little hill and the color green I picked for the cardstock out of my scraps was a little darker because this is a nighttime scene. So I think I'm going to just add a little bit of brown to the edges there, just give it a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more dimension. So I'm just going to create a little bit of a mask. Not too good a one, but that's okay. And that way I can have a little bit of dimension on this piece of card. If I can hold it straight. And then I'm just blending out what's left. Of course, I am going to be trimming this down most likely so that it fits correctly on the card base. And I'm just going to put these together using my dot liner adhesive. And I am just putting a little bit of the adhesive across the top on the back of that little hill that I made. And then I'll line it up down here at the bottom. Got a nice little panel. Now I just need to trim it down so it'll fit on the front of a card base. So I decided I'm going to add the sentiment in with some heat embossing as well. So I'm using one of the Creative Corners pieces from the Misty Creative Corners to just try to line everything up. And I put all of my little characters out generally where I think I want them to be, and then I'm just using the straight edge to line up where the biggest part of the sentiment's going to go. And I need to slide that over just a touch so they're closer together. So it's going to say, our friendship is written in the stars. Okay. And because I wanted to make sure that that stayed straight, I just placed the word stars. It's actually 2 stamps because this set lets you say star or stars in this real nice script font. So I am basically putting that on top of the plastic. Now I'm going to go ahead and close my stamp platform door over that so it picks up the stars. And now of course I need to get this guy back where it goes because that stamp kind of moved a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to take out that Creative Corners, pick up the other piece, and now I can stamp and emboss those all at once. And we don't want the sentiment the embossing powder to go all over the place. So I'm going to cover that very well with my anti-static powder. And I'm going to be using the same white heat embossing powder from Recollections. And that looks pretty good. The only thing is it did get caught a little on the adhesive that's behind my panel there, which means I probably should have embossed it before doing that. But I also did not know for sure where I wanted the positioning. So let's see if I can get most of that out. Now I can put the little characters, my little foxes and bunnies on there, and for that I'm just going to use some art glitter glue. Actually, I want to put the bunny first. And the reason I want to put the bunny first is I want the tail to be kind of wrapped around her. And I have to say that that highlight that I tried to do, this is the first attempt on that, the highlight that I did around the edges of the characters really does make it look like there's light coming from in front of them, and I really like that effect. I'm going to have to use that more often. decided I wanted to decorate the inside of the card too a little bit, so I'm going to use a few of those little stamps, and again I'm going to do a little heat embossing on the inside of the card too. And I'm doing all of this before I do the final assembly so that it will actually stamp well. Again, I'm using an anti-static tool and my Wow heat embossing powder. And that looks good, and I'm going to just go ahead and put some of that white embossing powder over the stamped images. And we'll again go ahead and heat that up with my Marvy heat tool.
And the heat is warping the panel a little bit, so I'm going to make sure to add heat to both sides of the panel.
So to adhere this onto the front of the card, I'm going to use some foam tape, and that'll add just a little bit of dimension to our card. Then to help me to get good placement and correct it if I put it down wrong, I'm going to also add some art glitter glue, some liquid glue to the back of all of those foam strips. This gives me just a little bit of wiggle room before everything starts adhering really well. Okay, so let me get that lined up. And then I'm going to add a few little crystals to finish this up. I think that the crystals would just add that little extra accent up in the sky and add just a couple more little stars. That finishes this DiesRUs design team project for today. Some of the products that I use can be found at the DiesRUs website, and I've left links to these in the description below. Here are some other videos that I know you'll enjoy. Thanks you so much for dropping by, and remember, if I can make it, you can too. See you next time.